manner with self-discipline and respect for each other. I hope that as a system, we're trying to show that, and I hope that tonight, as we have these discussions, we can continue to be honest with each other, not be defensive, and share our concerns, but do it in a manner that we respect each other and continue the conversation. Tonight, we'll have our superintendent and our 3 assistant superintendents up front. Lynn Sparks, our director of adult ed, who will assist in moderating this forum. As I mentioned previously, we get a large group. Lynn helps out during the forums, and I appreciate his help. In the audience are members who are available from our school board. Chris Grant is here. Chris is the president of the board. Pat Kernan is the clerk. I think Jamie's over here, a member of the board. Valerie Arkin will be joining us. She's at a brief award ceremony at the city councilman meeting. She'll be here as soon as she can. Chris Ott is teaching the class at the local community college, so he is not able to join us, at least at the beginning. I know if he can get here, he will. Our structure tonight is Luz will provide a brief update of the budget. Luz is Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. Bill Farragut from Human Resources, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, will provide an overview of the negotiating process. And from there, we'll turn it into a question and answer segment where you can raise issues, share your ideas, and focus on solutions, and ask questions of the members of the cabinet. Fair enough? All right, so with that, let's start with Luz and the issues of the budget.
Good evening. My name is Luz Caceres, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business Services, which essentially means I am the Chief Financial Officer for the school district. All right, so I'm going to just update you a little bit on what's happening with the budget. As a reminder, back in December, as a first interim, we brought to the board a budget deficit of about $3.6 million. This budget deficit has 2 components. The first is these one-time positions we put back into our budget over the summertime that are worth about $1.3 million. They're funded with one-time resources, and so because those one-time resources will have been spent by the end of the fiscal year, these positions will be eliminated. The next piece is the natural growth in our budget, and that totals about $2.3 million. So as of December 15th, that's our first interim, we had already identified a budget challenge of $3.6 million. We had an unknown, and that unknown was what was going to happen at the state level. We were awaiting the governor's proposed budget, which was released on January 8th. So on January 8th, we got an idea of how the governor is planning to solve the $20 billion problem that exists at the state level. So as a reminder for folks, the state spends money on us, and they do that in that their expenditures equal our revenue. So on January 8th, the governor did release the proposed budget, and that proposed budget is going to have an impact on us of about $3.3 million in loss of revenue. That $3.3 million has 2 components. The first is, you might hear the governor saying that he is fully funding COLA. That's a true statement. He really is fully funding COLA. Unfortunately for us, COLA is negative this year. It's a minus 0.38%. So when we apply that to a revenue, it's a loss to us of funding, not a gain, which is usually what we expect. So for us, that totals about $400,000. The second piece is a brand new cut to the revenue limit of about $2.9 million. So those 2 components make up that $3.3 million new shortfall that we're anticipating in our budget for this upcoming fiscal year. I want to elaborate on one more point here. That we're at the very start of this budget process for the upcoming fiscal year. So the governor's proposed budget is just the initial step. His solution to the $19.9 billion deficit at the state level includes some risky assumptions. One of those risky assumptions makes up about 35% of his total solution. That's $6.9 billion. What the governor has done in coming up with a solution for that budget deficit at the state level is assumed $6.9 billion of new ongoing federal dollars. There is really no basis to assume that sort of revenue, brand new revenue source in the state budget, but he has gone ahead and assumed it. So I would call that a risky assumption, and between now and May, when the governor releases what's called the May revise, or the governor's recommended budget, we expect to hear additional information about what's going to happen with the rest of the budget. But I would call that $6.9 billion a pretty risky assumption. So is this $3.3 million new budget shortfall our worst case scenario? Not likely. We're likely to hear more bad news over the next several months. So at this point, grand total, we're looking at $6.9 million worth of spending reductions for this upcoming fiscal year. This next slide, you probably can't see very well, and that's okay. It is included in your handout, full page in the back. The point here is that we really are at the initial stages. So there is a lot of negotiation, a lot of work that's going to happen at the state level before we have a real budget act to finalize our own budget on. So we wait for that May point, about mid-May when we get the governor's recommended budget. And then after that, they're still negotiating. We hope for a budget by July 1, but we generally don't expect to receive one until sometime in the summer. So bear with us as we get better information. We will share that with you immediately so you have a sense of what those budget reductions are going to look like ultimately for next year.
Thank you. Before we turn it to Bill to discuss collective bargaining agreement, Lynn and I have cards. Again, in the community forum structure, you don't need to fill out speaker cards in order to address the panel.